Good morning and welcome to Rising Fridays. We have a great show for you today. I'm Amber Duke, joined by Jessica Burbank. Jessica, good morning.
Good morning. Happy Friday, Amber Duke. We have a good show, a couple very interesting interviews for everyone.
Yeah, I'm excited. President Biden, meanwhile, is digging his heels in. He doubled down and says he is not stepping down from his re-election campaign. Here he is at the White House 4th of July barbecue.
You got me, man. I'm not going anywhere. All right.
Comment comes a day after he met with some Democratic governors to shore up support amid growing calls for him to bow out of the race. In an attempt to reassure them, the president said that he's tweaking his schedule, curbing events after 8 p.m. so that he can get more sleep. This is according to several news reports.
Now, one White House official told Axios reporter Alex Thompson, quote, "Everybody is miserable and senior advisors are a total black hole," end quote. The uncertainty surrounding Biden appears to be scaring off donors. Disney heiress Abigail Disney told CNBC News that she's now going to withhold donations to Democrats until Joe Biden drops out. Major donor philanthropist Gideon Stein said he's decided to pause planned donations of $3.5 million per CNBC again. Now, Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings, who's become one of the Democratic Party's biggest donors, joined the chorus of people calling for Biden to relinquish his bid for re-election. And the bad news for Biden just keeps stacking up. A new New York Times Siena College poll published this week shows he's now behind former President Trump by 6 percentage points. Among likely voters, he is 43% compared to Trump's 49%. And among registered voters, Biden has 41% and Trump has 49%. So things are not looking very good for someone who is called Sleepy Joe to hear that he needs to get to bed earlier. Also, in that meeting of Democratic governors, rather, he apparently said, "It's just my brain," and the reactions in the room were mixed. That, okay, that's the most important part. And it was unclear if he was joking or if he was serious. What an abysmal place to be, Amber, that this is the leader of our country and the front runner for the Democratic Party.
It's absolutely brutal to watch. And at a certain point, it's not even funny. It's actually just sad that he is still in there, that people have not stepped in sooner to get him out of the way. Clearly, somebody else is running the White House because I don't think Joe Biden is capable of it. And I think that's the most important question that the media and the American people, frankly, should be asking, is if Biden is this decrepit, this incapable of doing the basic duties of his job. As Alex Thompson at Axios also reported, the White House apparently intentionally schedules events between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. because that's when Biden is most lucid. They've been making great efforts to hide him from anyone outside of his very close circle of senior advisors because they're afraid of this narrative spreading throughout White House staff that he's not capable of doing the job. So again, who is in charge? Who is actually running the country? And how much of a betrayal is that to the democratic process that you have a president who is effectively a figurehead? Joe Biden, of course, in that fundraiser in McLean earlier this week, the transcript has now come out and confirmed the reporting that he did try to blame his international trip on his bad debate performance. The international trip that he returned from 12 days before the debate had 2 days of rest prior to going to Camp David to participate in the mock debate preparation, which they only started at 11 o'clock in the morning and then made sure that Sleepy Joe had his afternoon nap. So obviously none of these excuses are getting rid of this concern about Biden's health. And the continued leaks only confirm that the White House has been going to great lengths to try to cover this up. But I also would say, from a media perspective, these news outlets just a few weeks ago were telling us all that we were crazy for thinking that these videos of Joe Biden, who looked lost and confused and was wandering off, were problematic, running with the White House line that these were cheap fakes. It's not just a White House cover-up, but it's a media cover-up as well.
It's interesting to hear coming from the Joe Biden camp that the donors saying this are trying to force him out, that the media is trying to force him out. No one's forcing anything. The media is making commentary on what they observe, and the donors don't want to burn their dollars. They don't want to give $3.5 million to a surely losing campaign. That's how a lot of people see Biden being at the top of the ticket in 2024 in November, when 70%, over 70% of the country rather, sees him as unfit for public office. How can we see this guy as a winning candidate? Sure, some people are always going to be party loyalists and vote for their party. We see this reflected in the polls. But it seems that he slipped away to now it's at the point where Trump's margin of victory is not within the margin of error. And that's a very scary place for the Democrats to be. And they say that it's something he can come back from. But what we're seeing is unprecedented. We've never had a president this old. We've never been at a stage of the campaign where the approval ratings are this low and that many people don't even think he's cognitively fit to do the job. And in the age of social media, people are seeing it play out on screens all day long, every gaffe this guy has. And when we talk to the former press secretary with the Bidens, focusing on Jill Biden, right after the debates, the statement was about how the Bidens handle this sort of thing is that when they feel that they're cornered or they're being pressured into do something, they tend to double down, that that's their personality. It's very scary that a personality trait could cost Democrats the White House and could be running our country into a direction where it is the senior advisors of Biden making the decisions, not the candidate people voted for.
Exactly. And the only way that Biden can get away from this perception now that he's unfit for office is to go on a tour of unscripted media events and campaign rallies. And the truth is he's not capable of doing it. So his team would never agree to that because they know that it's only going to make the perception worse. I mean, this is a guy who, after the Robert Hur the Robert Hur report came out, the special counsel Robert Hur saying that he would not prosecute Biden or recommend prosecuting Biden for his withholding of classified documents because he's just a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, and no jury would believe that he had the intentional motive to withhold those documents, and they would never convict him, essentially. Joe Biden came out in a relatively unscripted event. He was fuming, he was angry, and he went on to actually make it 100 times worse because he accused Robert Hur of lying. He accused Robert Hur of bringing up his son's death, Beau Biden's death, during the interview, which the transcript later confirmed that it was actually Joe who brought up Beau Biden's death and misclassified the time that he died by several years at least. And then went on to answer a question about a potential ceasefire in Gaza and mixed up the presidents of Egypt and Mexico. So they can't send him out on an unscripted media tour because they're afraid of exactly that same scenario happening. Instead, they have him sitting down for a pre-taped interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, who is a Democratic operative. He worked for the Clintons and previously went off on Nikki Haley for saying on his show when she was running for president that she thought that Biden was not capable of lasting another 4 years in office. George Stephanopoulos accused her of not having evidence to support her theory. So they're running to a friendly media interviewer for a pre-taped interview that, of course, could be edited. ABC, due to backlash, has now committed to releasing the interview in full as well as the transcript, when previously they were going to actually release it in snippets, some on Friday, some later in the weekend. I mean, I don't know what they can do at this point because, again, there's no way for them to just send Biden out and have him get rid of the perception because it's not just perception, it's reality.
Honestly, at this point, I think about the senior aides and, Biden's team, the folks closest to him, and how it's very likely they're making key decisions that the president should be making, and that it's very likely that they're not telling him to step down because they like the power that they have in this moment, when they get to make far more decisions than if they had a president in the White House that had their full cognitive abilities. That's scary. That's why there's Weekend at Bernie memes with Biden photoshopped on trending on Twitter right now. It's laughable, but it's also extremely sad. And to see pundits running cover is ridiculous. You had Aaron Rupar get into a lot of drama on Twitter. It was hilarious to watch, tweeting things like there's not a single named source in this piece, which depicts that many people close to Biden who have had meetings with him have talked about the cognitive decline for a while. And the journalist who produced the piece responded on Twitter and said, I don't recall you having a problem with any of my anonymous sources who have provided critical information on Donald Trump in the past few years. And that really just highlights the hypocrisy we're seeing here from Democratic pundits, willing to question any reporting that is negative about Biden, but those same pundits did not need named sources for criticisms of Donald Trump or pieces of information that looked bad for his candidacy. And so it's just sad to see the hypocrisy play out in full time as well. And who are you running cover for? The senior aides that are running the White House?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I also think the Democrats might be hesitant to replace Biden on the ticket because they also recognize that this is not a November problem. This is not a next 4 years problem. This is a right now problem. And if they acknowledge that Biden is not well enough to complete the campaign, then he's not well enough to be president, then you have to invoke the 25th Amendment and get this guy out of office and have Vice President Kamala Harris take over. Obviously, the Democrats don't want that to happen. But I think that's the type of situation that we're dealing with right now, where you can't just argue that Biden needs to go because he can't beat Trump, because that would be taking a choice away from the primary voters, which would be anti-democratic. You have to say that Biden has to go because he's not mentally well enough to do the job, which again is a 25th Amendment territory argument. So I think that they're trying to be very cautious and tiptoe around the reality that he is just not up for it, that he's not cognitively well. But nobody will outright admit it. Even the Democrats who have called on him to step aside have all made it about saving democracy or beating Trump, but none are willing to admit the truth about Joe Biden.
Absolutely. And you have key officials, Clyburn, key pundits, major donors, all saying that this is what they want from the Democratic Party. The people who prop up the Democratic Party with strategy, with dollars, these are the people questioning the campaign, the people you can't run a campaign without. And so this is going to have to come to a head at some point soon. A lot of people were assuming it would be, this week, with either Wednesday or Thursday. Biden called a meeting of a lot of the White House staff, and many people were expecting some indication that there would be a baton pass to maybe Kamala Harris, or the Democratic Party would go through a process of deciding who the delegates would support at the convention. And instead he doubled down and said, I am still running. I'm not going to end my campaign. I'm going to keep going all the way through November. And many people had already assumed that the announcement would be that the baton's getting passed to Kamala, and we're starting the process of that now. And Twitter just blew up with Kamala Harris support, people who are members of the K-Hive, Kamala's very loyal group of supporters who are very online, that they would team up with the Bernie Bros and the party's finally unified. And it was a beautiful moment for like 2 hours. And then this news broke of what was said in the meeting. And it's sad that potentially by still running, Biden is costing the Democratic Party a moment of unification that they haven't had, that they need to continue to get votes. They need that working class progressive support. Otherwise, I don't think we can see them recovering from this, running a president like Biden into 2024.
Yeah, and if they are going to push it out, they have to push him out, rather. They have to do it soon, because the Ohio ballot, they need to provide their name for the nomination in just about a month from now. I believe that's August 7th is that deadline. So they don't have much time to sort this out. Of course, we're going to continue to follow this story with all of the latest developments right here on Rising.